I want to say a few, Rebecca mentioned the proprietor records. I thought I'd just mention a few, something that Odie was working on at the time of his death. The proprietor, it's always been a fascinating subject for myself and Odie, what the proprietor records mean to the town of Rehoboth. What the proprietor records are is how the town was divided up into lots, and not everybody has a clear setup on the registry of deeds of how that town was divided. Dayton does have something, but it seems like Rehoboth was very detailed, and I don't fully understand, and Odie didn't either, how the proprietor records, who became a proprietor, but you have to realize the Indians were cheated, or whatever happened. They lost their land, and what was the mechanics of how did they actually, the Rehoboth settlers, how did they actually divide the land up? They were living in East Providence at the time, and in about 1700 they came out here after King Philip's War, and they started dividing the land. And the land was divided amongst the proprietors. Now you became a proprietor, I have no idea. It seems like a lot of them were from Boston, there's a lot of speculation. Some of the proprietors only were given land for their own use, but they didn't keep it. And they would transfer or sell to somebody else. And some proprietors with the same names of the state, they actually stayed here and built houses, the Blisses, the Pecks, the Carpenters, the Goffs, and so forth. And they're the ones that would, the present, the old families are descended from today. Now the proprietors, I just want to show you what he, now leave it on the table over here afterwards, a sample of what he was doing. The proprietors' records and to me, it's invaluable because it shows you how the town was, as we see it today, was developed, how the roads were developed, and the roads are mentioned, Bay State Road. Of course, they didn't have names in there, but they would say it was somebody's house or somebody's swamp or something like that. But the proprietor records in the registry of deeds, they're written, handwritten, very difficult to read. I'm looking at one that I'm going to leave over here that describes the land. Given to Job Randall, about 1700, and he owned a huge tract of land at the corner of Anawan Street and Fairview Avenue. And what Odie was doing, he was plotting out. So I had to say one thing. I had to thank the Register of Deeds in town way back. Freddie Forrest, the assistant registrar of deeds, noticed that Odie was interested in the proprietors, and he, on his own, every Saturday morning for months, he came in to the registry of deeds, and he copied all the proprietor records, and gave him, there's 5 books of them, and he gave it to Odie with them. From that, Odie started, he had all the records right. I don't know where the records are now. They're probably not in the registry of deeds. So it's a very important historical find for Rehoboth. So from these deeds, Odie started plotting the lots out. It's a tremendous job. He used to do it over in the evening in my office. And I'll leave this out, and you can see, these are his notes of all the lots and the road, and I thought he was right in the middle of this one at the time of his death. I think he had the idea of when it was all done to publish something on how Rehoboth in the form of maps of how Rehoboth was developed. And the lots in around 1690, 1700, 1720. But everything was in a jumble. The way he worked, he'd have everything in his mind, and the papers everywhere. So after his death, I tried to get the papers together, and I thought it might be a good idea to take at least one section. He had plotted 6 maps. They were big maps, as big as. In fact, one section would be 4 sheets of paper this big, and there are 6 sections, so there's 24 sheets, and impossible job for me to digitize it and print it so you can read it. But I thought I'd do one to give somebody an example to go by, or just give them the idea of what is available in these records that I'm going to pass on to the museum. And otherwise, I'm just going to give you a bunch of papers that look like. If I give you a bunch of papers like that, it will mean nothing to you. It takes a lifetime of surveying to interpret this stuff. You have to know the old family names, you have to know the old lots and so forth, which we both had done. And so the paper I'm going to leave here is just a sample of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take the data that he put together and put it so you can read it. And I'm in the process of doing, there's 4 sheets in one section of the town, the northeast section of the town. So I just thought I'd mention that so you'll know, maybe someday somebody will pick it up and continue on, but it's so complicated and difficult when you look at his notes. I don't think anybody's going to do it. You have to have the time, and you also have to have a land surveying historical background. So anyway, I'll leave that there. Choose how to decide to. I think it would be a nice idea to take all the newspaper articles. There was the paper. There's 4 newspapers that cover the town of Rehoboth, which I take, and every time I saw an article, you got that book? She familiar, and I cut the articles out, and I'd get a stack of them, and then I'd give her the articles, and she pasted them into books, everything that ever happened to Rehoboth from, well, it begins in 1880, but we didn't begin. I had a lot of old stuff I put in there, and but we began about 1985, 86, and we continued it up till a few years ago where we couldn't continue it any longer, and I would like to pass them on, but the big thing is there are museums that have, I know there's one that has something similar to this. I mean, articles and articles, and I'll leave this on the table, but I'm going to take it home with me. But the big thing she did, she indexed it, and Nancy's I have to say unfortunately she is has a debilitating disease and can't continue, but she was an expert on working with the computers, and she has everything indexed from this way and that way, and so if you ever looking for something in 1990 or 1985 or back then, or even back in 1880, any newspaper article we had, it's in that book, and so I'll just leave this out in a sample. So anyway, that's a couple of things that I think you might be interested in, and it might be an addition to nice addition to the room up there. I don't want to keep talking, but I do have an anecdote. When I keep taking up your time, but when I look at that room upstairs, memory comes back to me. The great blizzard of 1978. We had a cop. We were building the museum, and the way it was built mainly by volunteers. And but we had a full-time carpenter, a real old Yankee, Cape Cod Yankee, and he'd work during the day here all week long, and then the weekend we'd come down and work with him. And, but anyway, he didn't have a car. He lived in town. There was an old bus line that ran from town to Providence. He'd come out in the morning with his lunch, get off at the corner out here, Bay State Road, Route 44. He would walk in Bay State Road and work all day, then take the bus home. Well, it started snowing, and about 10 o'clock in the morning, real heavy. I was out surveying, and finally we had to quit. We it got heavier and heavier during the day, and around 5 or 6 o'clock, I got a call. I didn't think of Brian down here. His name was Brian Hamlin. I got a call from Everett Lucas next door, who said Brian is in the museum, and there's a light on over there, so he must be stuck in the museum. So I had bought a Ford Bronco, a 4-wheel drive, sort of like a Jeep, and I had to be crazy. Well, first of all, I called the police. I said, would you check the museum to see if how Brian's doing, or if he's okay? The police said we can't do anything. The cruisers are stuck all over town. So I told my son Nathaniel, my youngest son Nathaniel, and we got to go down and check on him. So the roads were just barely passable. We didn't have those 4-wheel drives and the special tires. We would have been stuck on the snow somewhere. We got as far as the Congregational Church, and that was the end of the road. There was nothing but a big snow drift in front of it. So we walked through the snow, waded through the snow to the stairs here, and there was Brian. He was ready to spend the night. There was no heat in the museum. There was no windows. The windows were just boards. The roof was shingle, and we were in the process of shingling the wall. And I had taken a 55-gallon drum, and I had converted it into a wood stove with a pipe sticking out the side of the building. So Brian was, to keep warm, he was shoveling the scraps of wood that he had here perfectly content. I mean, he never showed any emotion at all. He was all straight. He actually, I think, had lived that a pretty tough life because he was a veteran of the. He had a few instances in the past. He was a infantryman in the Korean War, and I think he was used to sleeping outdoors. But anyway, he was ready to spend the night there. And if you could have seen the way he was going to sleep on the floor, have to get up every once in a while and throw some wood on the fire. Well, anyway, that's what makes me. That memory comes back to me when I look at that room. It's done a beautiful job of setting that up, and I hope people will get a lot of use out of it.
Did you take him home with you?
Yeah. You took Brian home.
The what?
You took Brian home, right?
Yeah, right. I took Brian. Oh yeah, I took Brian home, and he slept in a bedroom. And then the next morning, the governor says that all the roads are closed, but regardless of that, I drove into town and dropped him off at his house. But that really brought back a memory. Well, thank you very much for coming, and I think it's a great honor to name the room after Otis, and of course, I don't want to forget Bob Trim. His things are going to be there too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He did. I knew Bob very well, and he was a great genealogist, and he and his wife Anna Mae. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.